Oh, we hit the button, y'all. All right, cool.
It's all running now. You ever get that feeling that you're running down a hill and like if you don't keep running, you're gonna just start the roll and just tumble?
What's that thing we say about Saturday Night Live? It doesn't start uh, when it's ready.
I love that you sent me that. That was from
Oh, we made it just in time. What up, and welcome, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, all of that stuff that they say on radio's professionals, live streams, or what have yous. This is open office hours for SN Community College, as we like to say. My name is Prof B. I will be one of your hosts. I'm joined by Mr. Sean McLean, or Professor Sean, and Professor Casper, who's both of whom are actual or have been or continue to be actual professors. I just play one on TV, and just shouting out. Yeah, we've got folks doing their thing. Oh, Sean flexing with some animation there in the background. I'm going to go ahead and enable our little display names here. And I'm going to rename Luke Casper just because I can to Professor Luke. Luke from Duke? No, wait, that's not right. No,
not at all.
That would be that would be
careful with your colleges.
That was fighting words right there, I guess.
That ain't right.
So, welcome to Office Hours, everybody. Where we're going to try and put some context around some of the content that you're trying to learn in ServiceNow space or in life, I guess, in general. This week, we are picking up where we left off, where Sean was giving us kind of a really great intro to McLean's first law. People do stuff to things. And this week, we're going to pick up with that and talk a little bit about where all of those records kind of come into the picture, how everything is a record in the table, and how all of that kind of is contextualized in this platform, right? So I know a lot of you guys are coming to us from either some of our the sort of summer of ServiceNow CSA being free on Now Learning, and we're trying to help you guys pass that exam, so SNF. Some of you might be coming to us from the ServiceNow Next Gen program. We're happy to help with some of those components too. So make sure you guys send your questions, throw them in the chat if you're here with us live. Also, don't forget you can hit me up, ben.forrest at ServiceNow. Make sure you put office hours in the subject line, and we will hit up some of your questions on the show. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean here, who's going to talk about sort of our back to first principles, our first segment every week. We give you a little bit of the insight that not just people trying to do ServiceNow fundamentals are helped with, but folks that are also, just practitioners in the space. It's always good to kind of come back to the good stuff, to the basics. Oh, we got some cool folks. Oh man, look at that. We got some folks representing here from various cool places. So good to see you all live here in the show. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean, who's going to talk us through some of his diagrams on this topic.
Thanks, folks. I'm going to try to share a screen and see if I can manage this. So we tried this last time, and I may run into problems, and I'm just now realizing that may turn out that way.
Because we are radio's professionals, as I guess we are now. So
right. See if I'm running into the same problem that I did last time. Wah. So I'm going to have to flip it to you and shoot you the diagram.
All right. So I'll try and drive said diagram. Here.
This has always been a fun bit. So give me just a minute while I do that. What I want to talk about today while I'm busy doing that is just to say I wanted to take, so we talked about the idea that people do stuff to things, but to take that a bit deeper, and I want to kind of emphasize just two pieces really quick. Number one, we like to do a basic component of architecture in the beginning, and that's kind of the first principles, like what's the simplest method? I love to get questions, and that's part of why Ben is driving this whole thing, is for us to get those questions. So not just Ben, feel free if you want to shoot me a line to do the same thing at sean.mclean@servicenow.com. But really the idea is for us to kind of get to your questions in the stuff that doesn't fit in the space. Ben did a great job of explaining this last time. He was talking about, we're looking for that space in between the modules, right? And as we look to that in between the modules, we want to find those things that are not uh, maybe not covered, but we want those kind of questions too. The questions that you have that maybe didn't fit in the book for the classes that you're taking, or don't fit in the I don't know where to ask that. We want those so that we can kind of do more stuff and bring those out. So I just flipped over to Ben on a really ugly diagram. But what I wanted to do was talk table architecture just a little bit.
How ugly is it?
It is so ugly that I threw it together years ago and we're still living with it.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. All right. I thought we were going to play the dozens here for a minute, which is one of those fun improv games that
Oh, I couldn't. Yeah, my skill at playing the dozens is like,
we'll have to
I'm
talk about that as a consulting skill at another point.
yeah,
Uh,
my trash talk is really weak.
okay.
So
So this will be in. So try that link. Where did you throw the thing? Is it in the comments? This is in
I actually threw it in our Teams chat.
okay. Let me look at the team chat here. All right. Is that the same? Try this link.
It's the architecture diagram. Yep. And it's actually in the show notes piece too.
Oh,
Some of
okay.
you have
So
mentioned
that's
about
what
where are the show notes. We're going to try to get those out in a shareable format as well. One of the things that usually happens is once we get real experts on the floor like Ben and Luke kind of throwing through some things, that's about the time where I start working to take notes. So your questions go in, and I try to put those notes together and kind of get them through.
extreme close up. Nope, that's not going to work. Oh,
Well, and like I said, I also sent it as a JPEG in Teams.
ha, lol.
Yeah, Teams is the fun one. And as we're bringing this up, I want to go kind of just straight through to get to the idea of what is this diagram about? Within ServiceNow, if you're kind of doing the system administration and kind of getting to those basic pieces, you know that we're looking for everything's a record in a table in ServiceNow and all the tables are tied to different things, right? But understanding that table architecture is one of the things we want to kind of understand, because whether you're administrating and looking for where something's broken, or whether you're implementing and looking for how to tune something, or whether you're creating your own application, this architecture is helpful to get and see and use in thinking about any of this. Luke will talk a lot about, where are the most efficient places to do things. But as busy as this looks, the thing that I think is most important to understand that if you look at this diagram, there's a bunch of different tables. And anytime you try to get to the one down at the bottom, the black one that says table, you have to hit all the other tables first. So when we look at our little person typing, that person only has access to ServiceNow as a factor of them existing in the table called the users table, right? And last week we talked about users do stuff to things, or people do stuff to things. So people, records in the user table who are associated with groups, inherit roles. And based on those user information, we're able to log in, and based on our group and the roles associated, we then get to navigate through ServiceNow through the left-hand navigator. Now, in San Diego, I know we can make that navigator pop up or disappear, all of those things, but the navigation process is the same. And when we look at those things on the left-hand side, really all they are records in a table called application menu, or records in a table called module. And based on the user and the group and the role that you have, those things determine whether you can see that menu or that module, that thing that you click on the left or the right. So we're already seeing, before I even get to my table, and maybe that table is the locations table. Doesn't matter what table. So for now, in your brain, where it says table, just substitute the word locations. I still have already had to deal with 4 tables, right? The users, the groups, the roles, and then 5, 6, the menus and the modules. So I get through the menus and the modules, and I click on the module that says location. That's going to bring me to the location table. But before it gets me to the location table, I have to go to the access control table, which looks and says, hey, based on this user, Sean, a member of this group with these roles, what records in the access control table have to be checked before I get to locations.
Wait,
So,
wait, wait. I want to stop and call
yeah,
this out because you're talking about it, and I think it's worth So you're talking about like, okay, so we got this table right here, right? Like we're talking about this table over here. And so we've gone in, I'm a user and I'm step one, like user, right? They're then kind of going in. Oh, where's my little, maybe I need to make that text a little smaller here. As we are trying, ladies and gentlemen, to figure out the best way to do this, but like we got this guy, this person over here, right? Oh, and my text is disappearing, but that's fine. Um, they are going and doing menu. It doesn't matter where they go. This is all like over on the interwebs side, right? Like there's this kind of line, I think, between, right,
Yep.
between what we see as end users, whether we're an admin or a developer or anybody, like we're getting the thing and it's in our browser or in our phone, right? And then on the other side of this line is all of the server side stuff, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's actually a great point because in the little diagram I drew it ugly, but it's meant to be a water line. Everything above the water line is the client side, and that's your browser, your tablet, your phone, your whatever. And so even before I get to seeing the table, I have all these other pieces or tables that have to be accessed to see that I have the rights to see that table. And so those things are the things that I think of as client side or above the waterline. So we had the users, the groups, and the roles, which gave me the access to click on certain menus or modules. But then when I click on the module, let's say it's location in this case, I dive down into the access control table. And the access control table is filtered by the module that I clicked on. So location in this case. So it's saying, let's look at all of the access controls for this one table, the location table. Okay, what rights, based on the roles you inherited, do you have to touch this table? And as you're already starting to get a sense of, I hope, the journey that you make to get to the table location touches a ton of other tables. So when we start thinking about really building things efficiently, we have to keep in mind how many other places have to be touched before I build something. So when we start thinking building extra bells and whistles on things, we want to consider that journey and figure out where's the most efficient place to do this and how will this effectively help me in accomplishing this goal. So our journey comes down from the access control, which tells us once we've clicked the module for the locations table, what fields we might be able to see or what columns we're able to access, or if we're able to access it at all, or if it's all read-only. Those rules are determined at the access table. Now we get the locations data. We go, cool, we can bring the records up. Well, before we bring the records up, we hit another table, the business rules table. And the business rules table checks for the locations table if there are any pieces or parts that have to be done before the record loads back onto the client side for me to see. So in the business rule table, there are potentially dozens of business rules that pertain to the table I'm looking for,
So this
location.
is for context for those of you guys who are taking the kind of basics and the fundamentals. This is the that kind of order of execution that you see, that little diagram, like the before rules, the after rules, the lookup rules, right? Like I didn't understand that for a long time, like in the olden days of, because I feel like ServiceNow does a really good job of making that pretty clear. But like when I used to do development work before, I didn't think to place it in those kind of time-based context, right? It was always just, here's a thing that I can do, and saying when and where and how you can do it kind of gives us a lot of clarity.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. And the thing about it is, though, this diagram is not, when we talk order of execution, we have to be careful because there's exactly as you said, the business rule gets touched before, after, on load, and like a dozen other times. But the key thing to remember is anytime I'm going to access a record, before I actually get to the record, I'm checking all of these other tables to see if there's anything I have to do to it, to change with it, to present to you before you see it. And so I go back through and I see business rules. I also check something rarely used these days, but super useful. The data policy table to see if there are any rules for things that at the table level are read only or invisible, or I forget the other choices, but I can create rules there as well that are table wide that allow me to restrict certain fields for visibility. Then I continue that journey. and I go up through. And when we think UI actions, I'm determining before I get above that waterline and go back to the client, what buttons, what links, what functionality do I want to present with that location table? So I go to the UI actions table and ask, hey, are there any buttons specific to the table that I asked for, locations, that I need to have? Or are there just some global ones?
Now,
So we kind of go through that whole loop, and then the last couple things we do is we generate the form, which is a record in a table called sys form view, or the list, which is a record in a table called sys list view, I think.
so we're talking
And
about more stuff in the client side, right? Like we've gone
exactly,
above the waterline. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Now,
Okay.
one thing I want to call out, as you were going through this, Sean, you did a great job of mentioning that there's different ways you can look at what you want to do and where you want to do it based on, we'll say, efficiency or whatever else, right? And there's a ton of different. What you're seeing here are all the tools in your toolbox, right?
yeah,
And so, from a administration perspective, a development perspective, you can tweak anything in here and probably arrive at the same technical outcome. But things you want to keep in mind is how your user experiences when you make these tweaks. From when we say performance, we don't just mean how long it takes, right?
yeah,
Um, we mean
absolutely,
it's more than just time based, right? So one of the things that's very common and has always been very common in the ServiceNow platform is when you fiddle with ACLs in a very particular way, you end up with table renderings back to the user that we call Swiss cheese, right? It's where you see that there's 400 records in this table, but you're only seeing 4 of them,
right,
right? And you have to page to the next page to get the next 4 of a 20, what should be 20 on that page, but there's only 4 because it's giving you Swiss cheese because we put the ACLs or the data policies in such a way where the system knows there's 400 record and it's starting to send that back, but you're stripping out 395 of them on the way, right?
yeah. And understanding, and the whole reason I just wanted to take a couple minutes in this section to talk through that architecture is when you understand kind of that vision map of those pieces, you start to get to think of where would I want to make these changes. So we had all those things that happen under the waterline, right? The checking the access controls, the seeing if there are any business rules that are kicked off, the looking at display data policies, and then determining what actions or buttons or links I'm going to make available with the location table based on your rights, which is found out of your role. Now I get to that form, and what I'm doing is I'm building with the form the things that are above the waterline. And that gets us to client scripts and UI policies. Now, client scripts and UI policies are pieces that are reactive on the form before I have to touch the server or ask or add or modify any data. So client scripts and UI policies are 2 additional tables that we're touching that throw things out so that I can add kind of scripting and visible and user experience kind of things. I want field A to blink when I touch field B, or I want field A to become read only because they changed field B to some value. Those things all happen above the waterline. And now that you see this way that things roll, you can kind of start thinking when you design or when you administrate, or even more important, when you troubleshoot. Where could this problem be happening?
Well, we got
Is
some good questions in the parking lot today about troubleshooting specifically. So I love that.
And that should feed us right into the next section, which is talking about troubleshooting and logging and getting more information. I love that Jace posted out a diagram and the order of operations. Now, the other thing I really have to be careful about this order of documentation, you'll notice it's the first time you go through. If I click the button again, then the whole order changes because I'm clicking a UI action. And then, so I'm kind of hitting that piece that's at the waterline and moving things all around. The reason that I wanted a diagrammatic way to display this is if we went through order of operations in a well, which used to be a wiki, it would be dozens of pages. But
Oh, rip wiki.
yeah, right. Used to be so good though. But just to understand basically that before you get to any table, all of these other tables play a part should help you think about efficiency, should help you think about design, should help you think about effectiveness for the information, just like Luke was talking about. So that's my first principles for today's stuff.
Might I also throw in there with efficiency and everything? Let's also mention scalability, right?
Yeah,
Because when you start uh, burying end user functionality, end user visible functionality deep into script includes that are referenced by script includes, referenced by script includes, you're creating an administrative situation where if you don't have the right governance around your development practices, you might have trouble finding out how to fiddle with that next year.
yeah, and yeah, spending hours kind of tracking the rabbit hole down and down and down to find, the hip bones connected to the thigh
Yep.
bones connected to the is just mind blowing when you
Yep.
start doing it.
Well, so, and Jay's brought up a good point in the chat too, that is an exercise I'm hoping that folks that are starting to get into this realm will do, and not just take on our word, right? Because you could take Sean, like, sure, Sean's diagram is great if you already have a basic understanding of it. I think the next level thing to do as a learner here is to go through and try to diagram it or make your own notes about it, right? Like, this is a thing we talk about all the time in
Yeah,
our classes. Write your own textbook, make your own notes. Don't rely on other people's notes, because then it's just memorization. Like,
And
you got to encode it in your brain, right?
but one thing that might really make that not just an exercise but really useful is if you're an administrator for, say, the SecOps module in your
Oh, yeah.
application, right? And you've got a user functionality that is start a post incident review. Diagram out what happens when somebody tries to go start a post incident review, because then not only are you gaining an understanding of the platform functionality, but you've also documented how you have built this,
Mhm.
especially if it's something that you've had to add development effort to or modify or whatever, right? Because we've kind of glossed over the flow designer engine
Uh-huh.
and
Yep.
among many other things, but there might be significant functionality buried in there that you wouldn't want to just kind of gloss over.
This is one of those things that Stacy Bailey actually taught me to do
Oh,
back in the day, which was to walk through like this diagram, right? This sort of diagram, and not just for like, because people give you the I want like people to have access to these fields, but what she told me, like showed me, and this is actually like a really good process. I'm gonna see if I can find like the example that we use in the stories from platform implementation. There's this wild let me see if I can find it here. But basically, like a diagram, which is each of the use cases is user asks for it, and then there's a point to like a piece of data, and then like here's what data is displayed for that user for that use case, right? So I'm an end user, or I'm a requester, or I'm this or that. They request it, here's what their form looks like that they want, right? And then when they want to look it up later, what does it look, or when they submit it, what gets submitted, and then what other fields are visible to a developer or a fulfiller or an admin that looks at that same record, right? When they go to look up the value, what do they see, and when does it change? And like this kind of tacks on to some of the special access security rules that we talked about last week too, which is neat. Oh, Sean's got like a good point. Like, yeah, go ahead and add that, sir. That's a good one.
yeah. I usually do this. I started to do this, and unfortunately, in demoing the system, I want to build. I have an update set, but I haven't quite finished it. If you really want to learn, and exactly like Jay said, and there was another LinkedIn user that commented that about taking notes. If you wanted to build a sample table, I always do an airports table because it doesn't touch anything. I can build it in global or a scoped app. But I build a client script that's on load, on change, on this. I can't remember them all, on cell edit, etc. And then I build a business rule uh, on display before import, or before insert, after insert, before. And in each of them, I only put one piece of script. And even if you don't know JavaScript, it's fairly easy to put gform dot add info message, or gs dot add info message, and just put a sample message, and make sure the message says what you're at. I'm the business rule, and I'm the insert. And then you can actually see the way that those things progress through your system. It's a great exercise to teach yourself. And exactly as Ben's saying, we learn when we document or take those notes. Build that for yourself, and you'll see the order that those things are going to fall in, and how long it takes when you add all of them together, and how much it can slow a system down if you're using all of them.
So I love to diagram this stuff in my little engineer's notebook, which if you guys have ever taken a class with me or met me in person, you guys have all seen it. I've posted it like goofy pictures sometimes that I'll diagram. In fact, I've got it at my desk right now. Like I'm super fussy about it. It's like a heavy vellum, but it's like the engineer's like grid notebook, right? So I can do both diagrams and just write, right? Like, and I just do stuff. And obviously, because it's me, like I'm doing purple and pink and other colors, it doesn't matter. And I'm using a fountain pen just to make me feel fancy. But when I'm not doing digital stuff, I'm going to just call out like this particular tool that I find to be super useful and I use it all the time. And I'll throw it into the chat here. If you haven't checked this out, it's basically like wireframing, which you can use it for process guidelines or process like diagramming. You can use it for wireframes. It's really good for just like if you don't have a crazy Microsoft Visio um, license and you just want to be able to do a diagram or like here's what my wireframe looks like when I'm connected or when I'm doing this thing or other. Like, so I find it really helpful. I'll just throw that up there because this lets you kind of get an idea of what it is that you're trying to diagram and then what it looks like when you're doing it, which I find really helpful. So, and actually I see that Sean got unadded to the stream for some reason, but I'm going to stop my share for a minute because maybe it's StreamYard just going bonkers. But
Yeah,
like,
I'm back. I did that to myself. I went to refresh on the notes and it refreshed my stream access. Sorry about that. Right? Still getting the hang of this.
Yeah, I know. We kind of do like all the time. We're just like, and by the way, everybody using StreamYard for the first time, like, you're welcome.
Right.
Right.
Anywho, so yeah, like I feel like that was a really good place to kind of start, like with the, all right, so I've been given this set of requirements, or I need to just understand things. I think the big takeaway here is, well, one, taking notes is definitely key. Even if you feel like you've got the dogma or the doctrine in front of you, you've got the book. Taking your own notes is so key. I think this kind of goes back to some cognitive science, Sean, that you and I talk about a lot. That forming those ideas in your head kind of helps solidify them because otherwise they don't stick. If that makes sense to all y'all out there. I found that I used to try and take notes using my computer and I would just type and it would be like just in one ear and out the other, and I wouldn't remember any of the notes. I had fantastic notes. They look great. I used to use this cool app on my Mac called Circus Ponies. And I would just like do all my notes and it was fantastic. And I felt like I was just killing it at life and I couldn't remember any of it. So it's sort of like when they ask court stenographers, will you read back? They have to tell them, like judges are kind of trained over the years, or right? Like you have to tell them, go back 3 lines or 4 sentences or like 30 seconds ago, because like the stenographer doesn't remember what was said. They're just too focused on repeating or like typing everything and transcribing everything that was just said. Same with translators, same with anybody that is doing like live transcription. They can't tell you what they just transcribed. And the same is true when we do notes and when we're just like walking through some of our guidebooks. You got to write it down. Got to write it down.
Yeah. And then go back and review from time to time.
Write it down. There's a whole session you could do on notes.
Yeah. That would be a cool, bring Ms. Diane Cunningham in to talk a little bit about, she is the expert of mind mapping, but there's some great methods. So Ben, did we lose you? No, we didn't.
No, I'm still here. I was just kind of like checking. I was speaking of notes. I was checking the show notes for today.
I threw in balsamique and I threw in the core principles of taking notes for yourself.
It's balsamic, just like the vinegar. They just spelled it differently so that, you know, because balsamic is a product of Modena, like the region of Italy, and so there's actually a lot of back and forth now where they're trying to trademark it, sort of like feta cheese and or champagne, the sparkling white wine, right? So yeah, so balsamic is a vinegar, and for whatever reason, I don't know how they landed. I'd love to hear this from the original product docs folks like that made that product, but how they landed there, because it's basically notes on the back of a napkin is the original kind of idea. And this is like, you diagram, you're working with a client, you diagram like, okay, you want this thing to look like what? Like, here's the wireframe. I want, you know, the landing page to be this, or I want people to be able to see that. And it might seem like a little bit overblown, but I think it's really important to get those little bits of detail when we're not just building something new, but also trying to understand or reverse engineer somebody else's work that we're now trying to support.
So what you're saying is you should have acceptance criteria for your requirements, Ben.
Oh, good Lord. Really? Yeah.
I and you guys said something like, "Oh, when you get requirements." No, no, don't just get requirements. Talk to the person who wrote this stinking thing, because 95% of the time the requirement you got was written poorly. Even if they've written requirements before, they probably gave you a junk one, because that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And this is an interesting one, because I feel like that's the area where you've got the boots on the ground of seeing, like, I want to ask, how many requirements do you think you've reviewed and implemented?
Oh my goodness. I don't even want to know. I
Hundreds
don't
or
even want to know.
thousands? I would think
Thousands.
thousands.
I've done implementations with hundreds alone. Um,
Okay.
and I've written a significant majority of them, right? That was what I did for a good many years, and still doing in part in the role I'm in now for ITOM. But requirements are hard. I
They
mean,
are.
I would like a thing, right? And it's really important. Do we want to go down the requirements rabbit hole? I'm going to say this. You can answer that after I say this. When somebody says they want something, ask them why. Because very, very frequently, and it happened to me today in a phone call with a customer, um, somebody said they wanted a thing, and I just why? And it's not that I'm being obstructive or difficult or anything like that, but sometimes, especially when it comes to the ServiceNow platform, your interactions with people are with people who don't understand the architecture of the ServiceNow platform. And so they might say, "Oh, I want a button over here," when quite frankly, they want to accomplish a task. And if you ask them why, they'll just say, "Well, I need this task to be accomplished." And you go, "Well, I can automate it for you. Would that be better than having you click a button every time?" Right? And in that, 35-second interaction, you've made your day tomorrow better than it was today, just by asking why, rather than just taking it. Yeah, a button's a UI action, sure, but here you go. Well, yeah, you just added a button for them, but can you make their day better by making a workflow that's 4 steps long? Ask them why.
Yeah. And the number of times I've messed that up by making assumptions or just building things out without getting that level of detail. And the scary thing about doing that and then coming back to train other people later or seeing it after is going, "Oh, you did that because I said,"
Yeah,
you know, you look
and
at those
that's
systems, you're like,
and that's one of the reasons why acceptance criteria. When I wrote requirements, acceptance criteria was something that I never balked on. If we're writing requirements, I'll write the requirements as an implementer. But you, Mr. Customer, I'm going to give you the requirement I wrote, and you have to tell me when the functionality that we develop is done. That's acceptance criteria, right? I don't write acceptance criteria. I'll get on a call with you and I'll type the letters, but you're saying the words. Because
nice.
then you've got buy-in from that person, and you're going to then realize their why. You're going to figure out their why. And it might be perfect. You might have wrote the requirement perfect and it's nailed out. But frequently you'll be rewriting your requirement at least a little bit. And it's just such a valuable exercise.
So like a couple weeks back, we talked about this a little bit when it comes to this very notion of, hey, Mr. Miss Admin, like whoever you are, can you just add this table for me? I just want the thing. Just give me the thing. I put the request in. I'm gonna like, please just do it for me. Give me the thing. Right. And I brought up like Mike Cohen's sort of method on user stories, and I think people go like, "Well, the framework's not useful for me because they don't want to ask themselves or think about like, as a user, I want X so I can do Y, right? And I'll know that it's done when I can blank versus blank, right? Like they don't want to go through that exercise. They just are like, I just want the thing. Just give me like,
Yes.
can't you just give me the thing? I shouldn't have to explain myself to you, or I'm not even sure what I'm asking. I'm just telling you what I want to happen. Like I'm telling you about the dream that I had where I could just click a button and it was done, right? Like they don't want to tell you because they don't know the specifics behind the scenes. They don't necessarily have to, but what I think is helpful for us is the context of like what problem they're trying to solve. And I think they get frustrated because sometimes they don't know what problem they're just trying to solve, right? Oh my
It,
gosh, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, this person, I was just like, oh, it's that with that right there. Look at
Yep.
that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And the other thing that I've actually run into sometimes is people say, just give me a table, I'll figure it out later, right? They don't want to take the time to tell you the why. And understandable, I get it, right? Your time's valuable, my time's valuable, but there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution. Let me tell you that right now. It's
Right?
just,
Oh, that's going into
man, oh
quotable.
man.
Imagine you did that to your mechanic. I love this comment, right?
That
Like,
that is a really good one. I like that.
cool. Like, so,
Kudos
yeah.
to whoever wrote that.
Yeah, so we can't see the name on StreamYard because StreamYard being that whole thing happening right now. But yeah, like if you were like, okay, cool, mechanic, I think that it's making a grinding noise because it needs the oil changed. Just change the oil. That's what I asked for.
Yeah.
And then you
Right.
get like, and then you would come back and be like, it's still making the grinding noise, and the mechanic would be like, well, you told me to change the oil, right? Like
Yep.
I think that's where we get a little bit sort of bonkers with some of this stuff.
Well, and two, so for people joining this audience who are kind of in the I'm trying to get into ServiceNow and understand administrative roles and stuff. The funny thing about hearing and going, well, all of a sudden, all of these folks are talking about why, is to understand that a lot of what goes on, in addition to the coding, is looking at things like architecture and then having big long meetings to understand that why. It's not always just I hear this and I hammer down code magically and things happen. It's going through those discussions to understand what are the implications of what I'm doing with the architecture. Um, exactly as Luke had said, what about scale? So these are things that we want to consider and kind of think through. Oh, that's perfect. We've got a PMP coming in with comments on this.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we bring up that architecture image again? I
Yeah.
think it'd be really valuable because if you think of one of the most basic requests you could possibly make of somebody who's a ServiceNow administrator or a ServiceNow admin might hear is, I want Joey Bones over here to not be able to see this kind of data, right? If you look at
I
the,
know that there are people in the audience today that said they were going to be here that have this exact problem. So,
and if we look at this architecture, we look at these tables do things, right? You could affect that change at almost every single point
mm,
along that diagram.
yep.
You could
Yeah.
absolutely do it at almost every single point. But the
Yep.
question becomes, as somebody who understands the platform and the purpose for these tools, where's the best point based on my understanding of my organization, the asks I'm going to get in the future, and what we're trying to do from a platform perspective and what this person really wants. You're making an informed decision about where to affect that change.
Yep. Yeah. And understanding these pieces helps us get to that figuring out where's the best place. Being able
Yep.
to look through and that's where you're helping them. They know what they need, but you know where to put it.
Yep.
And you know why it makes the most benefit.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So now I'm going to go to StreamYard and try and bring this back down here. See if we can do it. I think we do it. We have the technology.
It comes up, but bringing it back away. Different.
Right. Slide right back out of there. So this is a good time, I think, for us to transition to, it came from the parking lot. So let me go ahead and,
Yeah. Speaking of parking lots.
speaking of parking lots, and we're probably going to come back to the same theme of people asking for stuff related to our knowledge of admins in the platform, because I think that is honestly, for better or worse, because there are so many examples of the platform just being it does what we say it does, provided everybody involved is working to pull in the same direction, right? And if you've got folks that are kind of stewarding that process, because it can be anything we want it to be, and generally it moves in the right direction, but I mean, I know people that ruin pizza, right? Like you can make the most wonderful thing on earth, perhaps like the world's most perfect food. You can wreck it by doing crazy stuff like adding anchovies and pineapple to it. I'm just gonna say though, like same with ServiceNow. Like you can wreck it if you're not careful, or you can let other people wreck it. Right? You get too many people putting anchovies on your ServiceNow instance, like that's gonna happen. Um, and in the same, I'm being silly here, guys, but like in the same vein, if we're not careful, if we're not asking why, or if we feel like we're not given the sort of latitude to not push back. Push back is the wrong word, right? Like, you guys, help me out here. Like, because I feel a lot of
You're talking about governance. You're talking
oh
about
Yeah.
governance.
yeah,
Organizational change management, right? Governance around, and this is one of the things that I think is difficult from us as an organization to properly message, because we have a platform that can literally, when a P1 incident comes in, we can turn on the coffee maker for you guys,
yep,
right? Like I can make you a cappuccino to get you going, right? We can do that. Should we do that? That's the
Yeah.
question that your ServiceNow administrative team needs to be able to answer. Should we be doing this? Again, not to be adversarial, right? Not to be difficult, not to make people's lives harder, but the purpose is to make sure that, like you said, Ben, we're not ruining the pizza here, right?
right.
If you burn garlic in a pan, get a new pan, because you're going to ruin whatever else you cook in that for the rest of the night. Right?
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And we don't want to burn the garlic of the platform here.
I like that. So I think this is like one of those things where I feel like there's got to be a whole because I for people that are going to be stepping into an administrative role at some point, whether they're a single administrator kind of doing the work, or whether they're somebody that is part of a larger team, I feel like a lot of like, how do we continue to empower? How do we give people the ammunition that they need to make the right choices or to help people make the right choices? Because sometimes people just need what they or want what they want. And I told somebody today, like, I was like, well, sometimes you gotta, it sucks, but sometimes you gotta let somebody slam their hand in the door or burn their hand on the pan. And we just we gotta be there and be like, not, I told you so, but like trying to give them the best that we can. And I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard time watching that happen. Like, I don't like watching a train wreck, but like, I can only do what I can do, right?
Yeah. And I think building that into structure is one of those things that an administrator, an administrative team, and a platform owner have to kind of discuss and think through. And I feel like that's another one of these episodes that we could dive into for a whole principles on managing and owning a platform. Funny, rumor has it we have a class about that, right? Being a platform owner.
There is a class.
We
We
have
do.
a product for that.
There you go.
There's an app for that, I hear.
There's an app for
So,
that.
yeah. So we're going to transition to sort of our big kind of comments and questions and things that have been coming in, because this was one that I know that we were pushing on. I'm just going to say I was heartened to get several messages giving me a rough time, a good natured noogie about the Ben's first day at ServiceNow. Just was going to put that out there. It's actually a little ad for the Welcome to ServiceNow application, or not application, course. That if you're an admin or you're on an admin team, or there's a bunch of people that kind of start bugging you as the admin, like, hey, what's this ServiceNow stuff about? And we used to just say like, hey, go take the ServiceNow fundamentals class, right? And the real answer now is like, hey, you want to know how this works? You want kind of like the basic walkthrough, but you want it to be hands-on, not just a video that somebody gives you. This is it, right? So this is the, hey, you just started or you want to know what this stuff is about, like, here you go.
And it features the most amazing thing to me that I think needs to be trademarked. The
Which
eyebrow.
is, oh, the eyebrow. I like, we'll do just for Sean. We'll
Just
do,
give me the signature eyebrow, man. I need it. There. I feel like my day is made. And you can do it with both?
oh my
That's a
God.
skill. I can only do one.
So should we be playing this video live and getting Ben's reactions as he watches himself?
Oh
Is that
God, no.
That would be funny.
All right. No, I'm not in for that. But what I will say, um, Joe, check out this section of the welcome search. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That is not, I don't know. Yeah. So what that
That's a
is it's just
good
like, so
question.
it is a good question. I actually think that that's we might talk about that for extra credit, because here's the thing, right? Like when somebody like actually this might even be related. Strangely enough, I'm going to find a way, and this is how we know we're radio's professionals. Um, uh, is that we can do kind of a nice transition in that this actually might be part of the extra credit, right? So if you go through and maybe you're on a team and then people are asking you, hey, what's this thing about? Or how does this work? Or they've never touched it before, or they want to know where to start. This might be not a bad place to kind of point them in some good directions, as it were. Um, so we'll circle back to that. Like I'm just trying to flip this so that I don't feel like I'm completely being silly. But the good natured noogieing I got was, dude, what up with all the stuff on the desk? And so if you watch the spot, which is pretty silly, and there is like a whole little bit about a printer being on fire. I feel like that we kind of leaned into my actual real first day at ServiceNow, which was kind of wild. And I came in and I've got all of my stuff from my cubicle, having come from a place like PlayStation, where we all had kind of whimsical offices and all kinds of crazy stuff on our desk, and it's kind of the shtick we did. And here I am in like kind of this like what I thought at the time was kind of like a button down, kind of like very like, okay, we're doing actual serious business here, and not making video games. And so like first thing out of my bag as I'm kind of unloading, I put in like I've got like a Courage Wolf poster, which I have framed up. Like you can't see it right now, but I'll put a link to it. I've got a Courage Wolf poster that I unrolled in front of my boss as he's like walking me to my new cubicle, and I'm putting out like the little creeper from Minecraft, and I had my you know some of my like little like figurines that like sit on my desk, and it's like those were all legit, and I pulled those out, and my manager at the time, Jeremy Robb, just totally didn't bat an eye, and kind of just was like, yeah, cool, so like you got onboarded, we did the whole thing, you'll be teaching like discovery next week and ServiceNow fundamentals, like no problem, right? And I was like, yeah. So I was like trying to like channel some of that first day energy, and that was kind of the cool thing. Like I got to be treated like an adult, and like, oh, you got this, like no problem. Like, and that was the thing that I kind of wanted to bring up as people were kind of giving me a little bit of a rough time about my desk. Like, was that for real? And yes, absolutely. A lot of that stuff actually ended up on my desk in day one in 2015 when I started. So that was that.
Well, and I have to look at that and look at your studio and everything from the unicorn to when you flip the backside, and we see the things kind of there, including what is it, Mr. Kool-Aid and all that, right? And I go, how could you even ask? Do you even Ben? Like, I mean, come on. Like, you know, he has the Lego Sony. He has, I mean, do
Right.
you even
Yeah.
Ben?
Yep. So that is legit. My office at ServiceNow, my cubicle, until we did pandemic, and then I was like full on, not in until we were no longer in the office. Like that was I had a lot of that stuff in the actual office, which is wild. So,
Nice.
but the actual real question, that is from the parking lot this week, comes to us, and it's one that actually has come up a couple of times. And this one actually started as a method to do demo data and wanting to know more about imports, right? So I think a thing that even many of us instructors and people that have been working in the platform for a long time forget about is the different kind of methods of import and how they work. So I'm going to share something real quick with you guys. And let me do, ooh, is it going to let me, if I remove that and then I add it back to stream? Okay, there we go. Cool. So got that. This has to do with some fun stuff that we did. And I'm going to pull this other guy up here. Let's see, import. Let me get my
Ben's playing with fire, sharing his whole desktop here.
That's right. I'm just
Yeah.
that's just how we roll here. So let's see here. Once we got this, we just have to know that I hopefully have enough rule sets and things on my screen, and enough separation of duties, as it were, to do this properly without being too much of a headache here. So what was interesting about this question was, you know, said user was given a whole host of XML files, and they were like, cool, like you can just import these into the various tables. And I think something that's worth noting is how the import XML function works. And it's funny that we even, I know many instructors probably don't realize this. If we go to system imports, I realized this today, actually talking to somebody. You know, when we go into, actually, let's do import set. No, update set. So when you go, like, people go like, well, how do I import like an XML, like an update set from XML? And people go, oh, we'll go to retrieved update sets, and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you go import update set from XML, right? They click on that little link. Sean, you're familiar with that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here's a wild thing.
This is like, yeah.
Don't need to do that.
Nope. Like, let's say that I just went to, I don't know, task.list.
This, I know what you're going to show. And to this day, I did this last week for a bunch of stuff. To this day, it bothers me.
Right?
It just feels wrong.
It feels wrong, right? So here's what's wild, that, and I actually like felt like maybe at some point I will just put a button or just a module that goes to this particular like UI action function.
Yeah.
But like I just choose this, and it doesn't matter where I input this. If I this is what kind of like, and I didn't, guys, just so you guys know, I'm not throwing shade. I didn't learn this until like 2 years ago. That I didn't have to go to the specific table.
And it's kind of like an offhand. I remember it from one of my courses when I learned the platform. It was just kind of an offhand remark. Yeah, just go to any list view, hit import XML.
Yep.
I'm like, did I hear that right?
It makes sense, but you go, but I'm not in the place where it needs to be. But when you think about XML, it's in the header. It says, what
Right.
table does this belong to? But it's one of those, I never would have thought of it unless someone showed me. I'd love to pretend that I just figured it out, but
Yeah.
exactly like you guys, I was years, and someone was like, why are you going to the table? Just import anywhere.
Right.
Yeah,
just
and that's
where you need to. And then you just go like, okay, cool. I'm going to open up this. Like if you open up an XML, and I'm going to do that right now.
And someone's got the exactly the
just
question.
ask your question, Sean. You just addressed it, Sean.
Yep.
It's in the XML. It's right there.
Right. So it tells you exactly when you go to put it in, and it's like, where are you going to put it? Like exactly what you need, what application scope. This is what's neat about this too, is it even tells you the application scope ahead of time before it lists the table. So like you just start putting this stuff in there, and you're like, oh, okay. And it gives you all the information you need ahead of time before you actually throw it into the mix here. So like one of the things that kind of blew me away the first time I saw this was like, oh, it's scraping that before, right? So you just run that little thing. But until about 5 years ago or 2 years ago, I would always go to the target table in question to do it. And that's what's wild. And yes, yeah, it's because the XML file itself, because of the nature of extensible markup language, it defines its target as part of the metadata in the file, which I just was like, I had one of those like, oh,
right?
yeah.
Hey, Ben, let me ask you a question because I'm not sure that I know the answer off the top of my head. Somebody gives you an XML file to import, and it's just records or whatever. You go, okay, yeah, sure, let me import it. You import it, and you go, wait, where did that go? Did that go in correctly? How can we know without having to dig through the XML file? That's probably the easiest way. Just look at the XML file.
Right.
But is there a log in the platform where I can go and say, hey, this import did not work properly for reason X, Y, malformed XML or something?
All right. I'm going to let you guide me on that one, because I know that was a pointed question that you know the answer to.
I
Oh, what?
No, I'm not sure. I'm looking right now. I just did a whole bunch of imports, and I'm trying to mimic all of that right now myself. But
Ooh, okay.
actually, it might be. Is it the import log table?
Well, depends on which kind of, yeah. So there's import log, but that doesn't count. I don't believe that. Yeah, it doesn't count
It
import
is.
XML. Is it?
It does.
Okay,
I
cool.
believe it does. Yeah, I'm looking
Search
at
that
some
log.
imports. I think I'm seeing it.
Let me see if I do. All right, so here's what I'm going to do real quick. I've got a piece of some demo data here that I know will go into
Cleaning table, cleaning. It might be.
So I'm going to tell you where this goes, and I can tell you there's a couple of places you can look for this. This is going to get us into some fun stuff in terms of. All right, let me make sure that that's on the right screen here, because. All right, so let me close this down. I'm going to have to. It's probably going to make me
If I've taken us too far afield, feel free to tell me
Oh
to
my
shut
God.
up.
Nope. All
This
right.
is right up the alley of what we're talking about, logs, right? How do you find the stuff you're looking for when something goes wrong? Where do you look?
This goes into. Okay, cool, perfect. Let me download this, and I know I've got a few of these, and they're all like in funky places. Oh yeah, here we go. So Luke, our mutual friend Julian Azeret actually gave me this demo data for another project. Um, and when I got it initially, one of my favorite attributes that Julian has is that he's highly competent. He's highly competent, but he also believes that everybody is as competent as he is, which I love about him. And sometimes I have to go and stop him and like tap him on the shoulder and be like, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm not quite sure. I've worked with that particular component and you'll have to educate me a little bit. I'm really sorry. Please continue to assume that I am also competent because you're one of the people that I love working with, and really appreciate because you believe that I know what I'm talking about, but also I just need you to show me this one thing. And he's always happy to do it.
Yep.
And so so he gave me all this demo data and we're looking at this stuff and we've got sys attachment, and he renamed everything PCC for the demo data, which I appreciate. He ran a script and just like appended PCC to the name of all of his export logs, because he ran a background script to export all the tables. And I also got the raw JSON, which was cool. We can talk about that in a minute. But like, if we're going to go into imports here for a minute, so let's say that I go, and in fact, I'll go in import log and we'll use import XML in import log, like, because I know that this will work. It feels like a trust fall though. I'm not.
It does. It just feels wrong.
So I'm going to be able to go sys attachment because we know that sys attachment is a baseline table, and I'm going to be able to attach all of this stuff here, right?
Mhm.
And we're going to upload. And we'll find out right now if, nope, so I did not get any log about, because import log is only for system import sets. It does not include direct XML table imports,
Mm.
which was a hard lesson for me to learn. There's another place that you can go find it though, because it does a commit. So if we go to rollback, I believe we can do a rollback context. Oh, I might just have lied. I might have to wait for the script to execute to tell me that we did that commit. Oh, yikes. All right, maybe this is when I shouldn't do live like stuff at the right time. But let's go make sure that the attachment actually got in there. Um, and also, this is a good time to talk about log levels, especially in San Diego, because there are a few log levels that are turned way down. Oh, Ermal's got my back because, you know, he'd be cool like that. But let's go to sys attachment. We can actually find the stuff that I just imported. Oh, not file name, but created. Right, a whole bunch of stuff that was just added, not 3 months from now, but like actually not created. We need, oh
Transaction log.
yeah, but actually here I need to go in and change. I need to change what's showing up on my list control here. Imported, updated. Yeah, so I've got a bunch of stuff in here, like I've got a bunch of stuff that's predated, just FYI, which is always fun for demos. So I'm gonna have to fight through some of that. Here we go. Got a bunch of cool, yeah, data source stuff. All right, so this is where we were bringing in some of this stuff for the vulnerability. So we know it made it in here. And according to Ramal, we're saying it is in, where was it, Luke? I heard you say it.
Transaction log.
Aha, yes, that's where it is nowadays. I remember that.
It's a big table.
Actually, so let's do this. So transactions, there's system log, cancellations, you got all users generated by user activity. Let's see, this would be sys underscore log or syslog underscore transaction. So let's do this. Here's a way that I think I'm going to make it so that I don't spend a million years. Syslog underscore transaction filter. That way we can load a filter first. And let's see. So this would be maybe created on today.
Yep.
That seems good. That way we're, oh, look at how fast that was compared to trying to load the whole thing, which would probably in my,
Right.
like in my employee demo instance, 1 bajillion records, right?
There you go.
And there we are. Ooh, nope. Scheduler.
Form stuff, list stuff. You just got to figure out which type it is. List,
Just now.
ben.forrest.
Rest info, scheduler, batch rest. Oh, like now I'm wondering, because this was 2 minutes ago. This seems like about right. SQL counts.
So what we're saying for certain is that the easiest thing to do is look at the XML.
Well, and I just found it, right? So, yeah. But yeah, that was it. It was, oh, actually we can, like, which one was it? We know which one it was. It was this one right here. Because we found out that it was in, nope. This one, come on, history. Nope.
You didn't click hard enough.
I didn't want it enough. Oh, that's a funny, like, let's do this. And if we pin it, maybe that's, but, oh, I just got to be faster on the draw. There we go. Yep. But there, sys attachment. There it is. There it is. Right. So we can see the session. We can see the processing start. This actually gives us enough info to go look at the, like, if we wanted to see every, like, if we've got log level set to high, which is a whole conversation we should probably have at some way later date. Because this gets us into some cool troubleshooting stuff, but I can go into syslog, set logging levels to high for all of this stuff. Because sometimes, guys, like for those of you guys following along, when you're trying to understand what somebody else did, it doesn't matter how good you are, you still have to go through some of these things. Because you can't read anybody else's brain. Like, you can't remember what they did if you're trying to support somebody else's application, which is a thing that admins sometimes have to do because somebody built a thing and then they left, and then it falls to guess who? Sometimes you. And if you can start to kind of figure some of this stuff out. So if the real thing is, if you go into logs, right, you can go in and see like in event log. There's a bunch of these, right? So if you go system log all, there's all of these different kinds of little utilities. You can go in and browse specific parts of the database nodes if you need to. But here's the thing, like, this is where you feel like a little bit like needle meet haystack. And you need to find a way to sort through. And so this transaction log, I don't know if you guys on the chat know, one of the things that helps you figure this out is the specific time. This right here will help you when you're going through and searching syslog, which if you set log levels too high, that means it's going to capture everything, right? And then you need to be able to sort through the 100 things that just happened at this processing start time. So in a pre-prod environment, if you're trying to figure out why something went wrong, this is what now support is often doing in the background. They're like in an environment, they're trying to check this stuff out. They're going through testing. They're looking for this. They go to trigger the thing that you did in an environment. Then they look for the processing start time. Then they go and check the logs. So we could go to the syslog, like system all. And this is not even all. Just by the way, this is just created today. Thank God that when you click this, right? But this is like so many things just now that as we were talking.
Mhm.
And I've got a bunch of stuff that's happening just in the background. Like you can see all of these integrations that are running because this is a demo environment and a bunch of stuff is happening all at the same time. I mean, we're still in 4 minutes ago, and this isn't even everything. So when we go to log levels, one of the things you can do is if you go to sys, and was it execution? I might be like way too far down the rabbit hole. And Sean, feel free to bring me back to shore if you think I'm going out too far. But I'm like thinking about this going like, if we go into debug, right, and we enable all of this stuff, right? Like we can, there's lots of things that we can turn on and off here. Ooh, and I've got some good stuff in the chat too that I maybe
Yeah.
I'll bring up while we're kind of talking about this. Let me
Yeah,
pull back here for a second.
logs and imports are good things to kind of talk to associated to each other. But I think, and I want to check to see if I've got your pieces right. One, the place to look is logs. Two, from Ermal, the transaction log is anything that happens from external sources and or hands-on keys for database activities. And then three, the biggest thing to get good at with the transaction log is learning to filter by date time, by other pieces, right?
Ooh, I'm gonna bring this one. I'm gonna star this one for later because this is a fantastic question. How would you import a static set of data across many tables for
Yep.
training data, or even heck, foundational data? Like if you're doing like an implementation, or if you're bringing a new application online and you're just trying to bring in stuff all at once.
There's so many ways to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, when we start talking about importing data, you got to be careful, right? Let's just be careful. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
I was gonna say I've got a specific like icon that I'm gonna put into. I'm gonna share right now, like that I always share. But go ahead, keep going.
Well, you want to. We have the ETL, the Integration Hub ETL, which really helps out and really helps make it a more accessible ability to integrate external data into your ServiceNow instance in a workflow designer kind of interactive user interface. But again, you really got to be careful with that. Make sure your data is clean, and make sure as you bring it in, it goes in the right place. So it's you just
Gotta
want to
say
be
though, the
careful.
integration hub ETL is specifically for CIs, right? Like it is
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
CMDB.
that's
Yeah,
fair. Sorry. Yep.
yeah. And Sean is muted, by the way. I don't know how or why, but maybe he muted himself.
I muted myself. I was typing notes and I wanted to try to make sure I got the notes and you
Oh,
didn't hear me clacking on the keyboard.
oh, okay. So this is one of those things where we get in. Like if we're continuing like on the sort of various questions here, and we'll just talk about the. We'll switch to the other banner. So this is the anything stuff because we've kind of gone beyond just like the one question that I got in the parking
Yep.
lot today. And then we got into logs, and then we're kind of getting into some other stuff. So we've got a couple more minutes in this section in the AMA, but like I want to hit up some things. So we talked about like how to find these transactions, how to go through some of these logs, how to talk about debugging and then searching, right? So my order of operations when you're trying to unravel somebody else's stuff is usually this is to perform the function because this gets into QA a bit, right? Which I think a lot of people kind of they poo poo, right? They're like, that's like below me. That is for other people that are not me. And as somebody who worked in QA for a decade, like I have to say that it is for all of us. And in fact, QA is governance, right? I often will tell people that risk management and especially integrated risk management and governance risk compliance, that is QA with a bow tie, right? Like it is QA, but you are well paid and people treat you better, right? Like it is QA in a tuxedo, but the same principles apply. The
Nice
same
to know
principles,
for people looking for roles and places to get into, right?
right? The difference between somebody that does like really good policy or really good QA is that they are the professional pessimists who are not coming with us. Um, no, nobody wants to be a Cassandra about this, right? Nobody wants to be like screaming that no, like the Trojan horse is a bad idea. Like people are coming to like the Athenians are coming to wreck us right now. You don't believe me? Like this is gonna happen, right? And you're like the sky is falling, right? Like that you don't want to be that. You want to come with a solution instead, right? Like you can come and say that the sky's falling if you've got the Iron Dome missile defense system to kind of help defend against that, right? Like you can come with a solution. I think a lot of times though we default, especially when we're in QA, when we care so much, and all of us in QA care about quality. All of us in governance care about quality. We care about risk. Nobody wants to see anybody slam their hand in the door, get burned, right? So we try to come at it from that perspective. And so you have to kind of think to yourself, like, how can I come at this in a different framing? And it's a slightly different frame. And that frame is, let's understand the bigger picture and then say, I like to say, let's say yes to things if they accept that if you make somebody sign off on risk. This is a nice thing to like Sean's like, oh, right? Like, and maybe Luke, you agree with this too. Like, I'm willing to say yes to anything provided somebody signs off on the risk. If they understand the risk, sure, I'll let you sign off on it.
Well, I mean, that's fair. Yeah, I was just gonna say I mean, anytime you say yes to anything, you're signing off on the risk, right? If you're
I'm
not getting somebody else to do it, you
right.
are.
Well, so I'm agreeing. Like, I'm willing to do the work as the operator or the person that is going to enable you, provided you understand the decision you're about to make.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't think that that's cynical, right? Like some people come at me and say that that's cynical. I think it's reasonable to say, sure, you can overly customize this environment provided you have a plan for the future and you know what you're going to do out like 2 years from now, and you know that this is a risk that you're going to take, but you know that these are the possible rewards and you're willing to own the risks. I think that those are reasonable things. I'm like, and I tie this back to QA testing for video games, which is, sure, like this bug, it will occur 1 out of like 10% of the time for this population of users regularly, right? It is easily reproducible and it will wipe everything from your memory card. We're recommending, from our perspective, that you go and find a better fix for this because the previous fixes didn't work, right? And if you still insist that like you will not miss your publication date, okay, you can sign off on the risk, but you need to know that this will impact X amount of users. And this is what like sometimes having to put it into dollar amounts, right? Like here's how much it'll cost you in support.
What, what
That I think is the important part. But I'll let you go, Sean.
I was going to say, one of the coolest things I ever learned or saw from another implementer. She taught me 20 years ago. We were faced with exactly the kind of thing you're talking about, and she instituted, which I later found out thanks to Dale Brown, applied to RIDAC, right? Risks, issues, decisions. She introduced to me the concept of a decision record, which she said, these are the choices, these are the associated costs. Who will sign on the decision? And I was like, my head just went pow,
Yep.
because like a decision record, someone owns the decision. Like someone
Yep.
takes ownership and says, I will sign off on these are the options, these are the risks associated. Which one will we take? And someone had to actually sign the physical doc. And she was like, because I was like, well, so we decided in the meeting. And she's like, no, no, no.
Oh, can I
You have
ask
to
you,
hand the folder and have them sign it.
would you say that that's extended from a particular table? Like, can you represent that somewhere? Is that
Well,
We could workflow that.
when I had it, it was a piece of paper in a folder. But then I loved when Dale Brown brought up the idea of the RIDAC, right? The risk, issue, I forget them all. Risk, issue, decision,
Action,
action, and change,
change, I
right?
think. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. But I had never seen a decision record before. That idea of signed off ownership for a decision until then. I thought that was
And
fantastic.
and I think to be to be fair, right? A signed off decision record made out of ignorance is not valid, right? We would just call it invalid, right? If you say, yeah, sure, we can do that. Here, sign this decision that you wanted to do it. If you don't tell them in a meaningful manner, in a
Hmm.
realistic manner about the implications of that decision, at least as best you can tell. Nobody knows what tomorrow's going to bring, but sometimes we can know that 2 + 2 is 4, right? And
Yeah.
so but I think having it in a meaningful manner, and Ermal brings up a really good point that I think echoes something Ben hinted at, is
Mhm.
that telling them that this is an impactful request or decision you are making. Here is the prospective impact. It will change the amount of hours we spend in the platform on this type of incident or task. It will change how long it takes to do XYZ. It will cost us X amount of thousands of dollars to implement because you want to do it and instead of blah, 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 right? Giving them a dollar figure, but then to address Ermal's question, right? All those yeses together might become impossible to maintain later.
But
With
if you
that
don't report them, like, how do you know?
Right.
right, right,
How do we get here?
absolutely. But you still might end up in that position. And to his point, that's very valid, right? You may have had people sign up. Yeah, yeah, sure, yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Well, because they have no skin in the game,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so
chickens versus
along
pigs. That's a whole thing.
along with that decision, if you can, and understanding that politics are politics in corporate America, if you can, you include in that decision a rider that says any maintenance that goes along with this decision that you've agreed to is funded by you,
Ooh.
comes out of
Right.
your budget, right? And that might not be something you can do, but it's another tool in your toolbox for having an intelligent conversation around that.
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's about fairness in terms of like bringing people to the table to make decisions, and I think a lot of us, especially when we get, and I'm going to address a lot of the folks that are kind of coming in from next gen and or like through the free like ServiceNow, like the fundamental stuff, and they're like, oh, how do you get into this? The discussion we're having, guys, is like well beyond just ServiceNow. It's super applicable to like a lot of the discussions in the community for any platform. This is something
Yeah.
feel like that we all need to better understand as people as we help people make decisions, right? Like, I know a lot of us, okay, so as an admin, you might not be a salesperson, but you still have to be able to articulate the value of your positions or the choices that you make and be able to articulate them to these other stakeholders that are paying the bills and are trying to make these decisions. And for better or worse, a lot of times we have to be able to explain why. And I know a lot of us don't want to come with bad, like we don't want to come being like the person that's like, oh, like we came with the bad stuff, right? Or like I didn't want to have to give you this bad news, or I didn't want to tell you no, which is kind of goes back to my like I'll be uber transparent about everything and say yes,
well,
provided
and
you have all the info. Like I'm giving you all of the pertinent info, and let's put
Well,
some like value on it.
and Ben, to your point, and this is the huge thing I think that you're hitting on for people looking to understand what's it like to do the job. The code answers and the showing architecture is one thing, but this discussion is the real stuff that you don't. It's not in a job description, right?
No,
It's
and it's
not in
not
the.
in a
It's
book anywhere either.
right. These are the discussions that you wind up having to have and having to deal with both before and after with your teams. So if you want to be an admin, this is what you're going to be dealing with. Exactly, as Ermal is pointing out, right? These are the things you'll hear about in your work experience, in your life experience. If you're moving into this platform or any platform that's in IT, you'll be dealing with people having to make those decisions, long discussions about the implications of those decisions, and then ownership of them afterwards and maintenance of those things after. And I think that's a huge thing that like it doesn't show up in a book. Like how do you write that? You talk
it's
about it and you hear it.
it's organizational change management, and every single
Yes.
company struggles with it. Every
Yep.
single one, because they want to do the right thing. Generally speaking, managers make the best decisions they can with the information they have, right? And your job is to help inform those managers around the technical capabilities that the platform has. And I can't tell you how many workshops I've done over the years, and times where somebody told me, and a very simple example is, I want this report.
Yep.
Why? Just ask why. And that was
Right.
something where I spent, I went into a customer, they had a list of 10 or 15 reports that their legal department always did. And I said, I'll come back to that, but let's talk about what your goals are and what this is, right? Just because you're creating a report and sending it to somebody on a Monday morning, we can do that in the platform. And I said this in every workshop. If you want more email, raise your hand. Nobody ever raised their hand, right? Nobody wants more email. And so if you can take that away from them and instead give them a good report in the platform that's actionable, that actually means something to them and actually gives them something they have to do. They can sit there with their coffee and look at this report for 5 minutes. Yeah, you could have done that report that they wanted you to do, but was it actionable? Was it useful? Was it helpful? Does it move the world forward a little bit, making tomorrow better than today? It's worth asking that question. And as a platform people, that's your version of no, right?
Yeah.
It's, yeah, absolutely, I could build that report. Why?
Yeah. We run into that. I had to put it in the chat. Do you guys remember Lost? And the guy that had to run and hit the button. And because if you didn't hit the button, we didn't know what would happen with the world. We didn't know why. We just knew we had to hit the button at exactly that time. And if you didn't hit reset,
Right.
so
Like, did you want to take that chance?
right.
Right.
I just keep remembering that and the smoke monster now. So
But yeah, it's hard. Everybody struggles with it. Everybody struggles with it, especially when you get a cool, shiny new tool like ServiceNow, and literally you can turn on your coffee maker. We can do that. There's a REST API.
Right.
If you got a smart switch and one of those old flick button coffee makers, you load it up, and when an incident comes in, call out your smart switch, turn it on, you got coffee. Like, we can do that. Should you? Probably not.
that's fantastic. Let me ask Ben, because I'm keeping track with our sections in you and time. We've talked blogs. So that was our parking lot. Do we have deeper questions? And really, this is everybody else's questions
Actually,
too.
I was going to say, so the log, so originally in the parking lot, it was like, how do I know where this, like, what kind of import system to use? And maybe we revisit this because like we got down
Mm.
the log jam. Because I think it was a valid, sort of a valid set of questions. And then we had like, it was neat because it spawned some discussion around, like in the chat around sort of where some of this stuff goes or where do you look. Um, and how to start kind of thinking about some of those things. I did want to hit up some of the other kind of common places to think about. And there was a really good question that I saw like, okay, well, so if I've got a bunch of data that I need to import to a bunch of different tables, how,
Yeah.
where, and why do we do it? And I actually have, there's actually not a bad way to do it if you can structure the data properly, depending on like how good you are at JSON. And this actually, like the first couple of times I had to do this was in CMDB. So we were trying to figure out how do we represent a whole host of CIs and all of the related things. And rather than try to reinvent the wheel, what I did instead, and what Glenn Pinto did, and we started looking, and Ron Kafori and a couple other people that were working on that class, we started looking at, well, let's think about the packages and the sort of payloads that Discovery throws in, right? What methods are they
Hmm.
using? And the answer to that is they use a JSON payload. So this is like kind of like this is way like this is well past fundamentals. But I'm going to throw this into. Let me see if I can find the right window right now.
You may not be aware of the Pandora's box you just opened, Ben.
Oh snap! What? Please tell me like please check myself or check me before I wreck myself.
Did you know that our agent sends JSON to the platform, and our agent, because of the way that the agent communicates to the platform with JSON, you can augment the JSON import capabilities in the platform to take whatever you want. wherever it comes from, say an air gap network.
So I
Wow.
wasn't aware of that specifically, but that totally makes sense to me given the specific docs page, like the JSON data source example, because like I was going to use that, but like, yeah, using the agent to do that instead is way smarter. And now I'm like, ooh, okay, cool.
It's
Because
all
what I was
command
thinking,
line, and I've done it, and it's beautiful, and it works.
all right, so using like the CLI, like the command line interface steely, like, or
I I don't know if I want to. Okay. Yeah. So our agent client collector for visibility has baked into it, right? So if you want to inventory data from CIs, as an example, there all of the import, all of the scripts that take raw JSON
mhm,
and run it through the IRE in order to properly populate the CMDB
yeah.
are all already written. All I have to do is send valid JSON to the platform via the agent, and the platform does the rest of it.
Oh, okay. That you might just need to show me because I have a script that I use to do that for testing and debugging. Can you tell me where I can like? Okay, now I might learn something just now.
Now, my the other aspect of it is our product team just recently released an update where you can create a record, and I'm not sure if I have the updated one. You can create a record in the agent client collector, one of the agent client collector tables, and attach your JSON, and it'll automatically process that JSON. You can just upload it.
Oh, that is
That's a very specific use case meant for discovering air gap network data with agents that have been deployed but don't have communication up to the platform.
well. So I'm going to do a thing real quick, and I'm just
You do
going.
your thing. Mine's a little more specific, but yeah, it's cool
Well, so
stuff.
the example that I show, like when because man, so I have in order to get a bunch of tables into a place, I will use a data source and then just use an attachment method for the data source. And let me just share, I guess, real quick.
That's a
Snap.
very straightforward way to do it.
I mean,
I like it.
that's what I'm trying to do is be straightforward, just so it makes sense. But like, let's say that I've got now I'm like,
Did I throw you off? Sorry.
Not at all, sir, not at all. So this is this. Where's my? I'm like, I know that one of these is my log. There we
And
go.
guys, I just put in the chat kind of explaining that JSON standing for JavaScript Object Notation is really, though it sounds
Yes.
way techy, all we're really doing is going, when we write any code, when we say something is JSON, we just agree that anyone passing data back and forth will put in curly braces and then quotes this field, comma,
Yes.
this value. And that's
Yes.
really
It's
all
really
it
easy to
is.
understand. That's why it's so beautiful. And you just say, like, so here's an example where, like, I use this one in class a lot. Oh, snap. And I just undid it. So let's see if we can make that bigger.
So it's funny, a lot of times these terms and things, when we throw them around, over time it's faster to say JSON or whatever it is we're doing.
Or
But
we
in
say it's just
reality, right.
on
But
like the shampoo in Japan. Yeah.
it's not nearly as intimidating as it sounds if you've never heard it before. When you go, oh, you're just saying put this field in this value, put that field in that value. Oh,
Right.
okay, I get it.
So I'm saying like payload, this payload has items. Right? Like it's very simple. Like here's the items that are going to be coming in through the IRE. This is like the expected value that the IRE is looking for, the integrate or the like identification and reconciliation engine. Almost had a brain fart there. And then I say, oh well, what class name for the IRE is the same as what table are you talking about, bro? And in this case, I have the which is now baseline, everybody.
Nice.
You're welcome. Um, drone, right? So if I need to do like if I need to pilot a drone somewhere, right? And then you say values. Values meaning like in this case for the IRE, like the field values. All right, cool. Here's like field one, short description. And then name here, right? And then you can tell, like guys, if you've been taking fundamentals, you know that the U underscore indicates that this is a field value that I created because in the drone field,
User generated field.
Right.
Right.
There is no FAA or Federal Aviation Administration ID for this drone in the baseline table. Like here it is. And then here's the FAA ID for it. And then we just say, okay, cool. Like we're going to encapsulate this payload. Boom. Now, what's cool about this is that we can, if we approach this not from how do I build a script from scratch? I would say that the best way to do this, and I know that I'm going to use a term that some people find derogatory, especially in the SecOps world, but like if we treat it like how script kiddies learn this stuff, right? And I see Luke grinning from ear to ear. There's a reason that term exists, because that's the training wheels for scripting and hacking and understanding how some of these functions work. And you're like, why? All I need to do is replace these values, right? I don't need to know how to build the script from scratch. That's glorious, right? So you now have all graduated from noob to script kiddie. If you understand that, like, if I'm going to use this exact same script, I can copy it and just change this value, and I can change these values, right? All the things that are in quotations, I can change them. And then if I need to add more fields, I can add more fields just by adding another field value, colon, or field name, and then colon, field value, right? So to Sean's point, JSON is like really kind of neat in that way, that value. This is kind of one of those things that, like, when you're bringing data into the platform or doing stuff, like, this is a cool method to do this, because I basically just built a payload and I'm just like saying like I'm just importing all of this stuff. And in this case, I'm using the method, the IRE in this case, right? Which is a built-in method. There's another method. Once you understand kind of the script kiddie mindset, oh, I can just create a variable called payload, and then I can crank
Right.
that payload using this other method. Awesome. Well, in that case, I can take this other cool idea. Oh, not this one, but this one. And go, rad. As long as I have structured JSON, right? I can do this. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's cool, Ben, but I don't know how to make structured JSON. Well, good for you that we have like all kinds of cool tools for that. So there's
And
JSON.
yeah, it's so awesome to me that a simple search on Google, even if you don't know what it is, and that's part of why I put the W3 schools on it. A lot of times we look at this stuff and go, "Oh, it's code. I could never spend the 6 months to learn it."
You don't have
Honestly, the
to.
lesson to look at JSON is 10 minutes. And even if you don't get it, just as Ben's doing, I was doing the same thing. You could go to Google and say, "Find me a JSON parser," or "Find me a JSON," and it will work both ways. You can write the fields that you want and the data that you want it to become, and it'll convert it into that style that we had. Brackets, quote, colon, and I miswrote it. I wrote comma, but field colon value, field colon value, field colon value. So it'll actually do that for you. Or you can go the other way around. You can take it as a thing and it'll show it like a table, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And these
Output
days,
Excel table.
right, even Excel will output to JSON for you.
Right. So it
So
doesn't need to be intimidating, and it's the thing that I feel worst about. So much of what happens is like the barrier to entry is the words sound so techy and scary that everybody goes, "Oh," but then you're like, "Oh, it's just a spreadsheet."
this actually gets me into something that, as we're kind of getting towards the final half of the show here, I'm going to stop my screen share. This gets me into this notion of, again, we're trying to make this approachable. We're trying to give you context and giving you the kind of like the handholds, or I don't know if you want to call it the floaties,
Mhm.
or like whatever in the pool. Like, we all, like, every one of us in this room have felt like we were drowning. And the only reason we're here is that somebody gave us the handhold, or somebody tossed us the floaty, or like the safety ring, or like whatever it was to get up and get a handhold so we could figure this out. And a lot of times it's just one being willing to accept that and be like, I don't need to pretend like I know everything, because I feel like the seasoned developer, their first answer is I don't know half the time. If they don't know the answer to a question, like the thing that makes you more credible is like, I've experienced something like that, but you know what? In this specific situation, I'm not sure. I can find out, or I need to learn a little bit more, right? You don't have to come at everything, and feel free, guys, to I'm taking a hot take here, but I feel like what has given me the most credibility is being willing to go like, I know a lot of stuff, or people think I know a lot of stuff, but honestly, in this situation, I want to think more. Like, I'm going to ask you more questions, and I'm not sure. Given the information I have, I can give you this idea, but like just saying I don't know has gotten me really far, or being willing to say I don't know, but and I not but because like we're talking about yes and so
Right.
and is the fancy but uh, right. So I don't know, and I will get back to you. I will do a little bit of digging. I'll find out. I'll let you know what what I discover. I think that sounds possible based on what because honestly, almost everything's possible.
Yeah. Well, and in today's world, that challenge really is the getting good at doing the research, right? Everything's on Google. The trick is sifting through Google efficiently and being willing to parse through it enough times that you understand it well enough to explain it to someone else or implement it,
Right.
right? And that's the part I think about that and I go, that's the part I would pay money. We were having this discussion, I think, before we started live, right? Paying someone to offload work that we would do, whether that work
Oh
happens to
boy.
be fixing our fence or it's that, is it interesting enough to you that you're willing to
Nice
go
transition, sir.
figure it out? Thanks. Well, if you're able to go figure it out and you're interested in, if you have the interest in the area that you're willing to pursue the answer and then explain it to someone or make it happen, then that's the skill. That's the thing people would hire you to do. So, and like Luke and I were talking about earlier, there's an increasing number of things that we'd hire people to do stuff for us.
I mean, and I'm just gonna say that like so there's two things we were talking about this in the show, in the pre-show, guys. So the I found like this thing that said like what's your average salary in order to afford a house in these various cities, and I'm in San Diego. Sean's in Orlando. Luke, you are in
Outside Philly.
outside Philly,
I did
and
not realize that.
the differences are pretty stark, and you guys are like already like I feel like you're a couple years ahead of me where you're like where I'm already outsourcing these things that like I don't want to play around with or mess around with, and yeah, I'd like to know, but like I'm still at a point where I feel like I kind of have to, like I'm paying the California tax on a little bit of this stuff, and so you guys are like kind of doing that. I'm like, I don't know that I can yet. I still kind of have to have that kind of jugad kind of like Yankee innovation type thing, because like I'm still hacking stuff together to afford, to have a house in San Diego is my kind of shtick. So I
Well,
don't
and Luke and I were just talking about the flip side of the experience that we the thing that we don't, well, I'll confess for me, the thing that I know that I don't know is how to get the right clothes. So I will literally pay to go to the place and go, I don't know. I have no idea what works with this. Can you
Oh
figure
boy.
that out for me? Right?
That is
Can you figure
absolutely well played. That is a thing that I honestly like. I probably should outsource more. That might be something that's worth, so that I don't dress like,
I don't know, Ben. You've got the style. That's what got you the commercial spot. That I'm like that. The shirt and the coffee mug on the shirt and everything was just kind of
oh man.
perfect.
Well, I think, to your point, we're not talking about having somebody go out and buy your clothes for you, but
No,
being smart, being smart enough to know where the limits of your knowledge are, right? So I'm getting ready to go to a conference. What kind of pants should I wear to stand at a conference for 7 hours and not sweat like a dog, Like, do you have something that's meant? I don't know. I don't know textiles anymore. Do you have something like that? And they're like, yeah, sure. We have this. It's meant for traveling and keeping cool on airlines and stuff. I'm like, I
Man,
didn't
well,
even know that was
man, love
real. Sure. Sign me up.
well, and this is the funny thing is that's a thing that I'm not interested. I could look it up, I'm sure, but it would take me 10 times longer than somebody who interested in style. When we talk about implementation and code, those things are I'm interested enough to go
Mm,
look. And if you're in here going, I'm interested enough or motivated enough because the opportunity with the job or role that I'm looking for, that I want to know enough that I'll go hunt it down for you, then you're my person for that role. And if you're the person who knows better than I do, and I know it's not that I couldn't learn to do that, it's that I'm not good at it now, and the learning curve for me would be that long. By which point I'd be wearing, I'd still be wearing parachute pants and my mullet, but that's just
Nice.
me.
So
Mullets
here's,
never go out of style. Go on, Ben.
I was going to say, so to bring this kind of home, because this kind of comes into our extra credit for this week, I think, well, actually, like our sort of, like, I'm doing professor predictions, sort of things that we're interested in, things that we're looking at, things that we're thinking about. This gets to optimization, right? Like this gets into how do we, how do we quick, it's like the build versus buy. Okay. So that, I guess that's where I'm kind of at. Like,
Yeah.
how do I make that build versus buy decision? And for us, like for me, it was like, okay, I can afford to do this thing, or I can be interested in a thing and try to deep dive into it if I can justify to myself the cost and time. So that's for me. And I'm wondering if you guys have something else that you're kind of, I like that. I like that a lot. Humble enough to admit you don't know.
I love that. Yeah, that's going up.
And
Perfect.
honestly, I think that that's a good level up and a good thing to remember, regardless of your tax bracket, um, because that is a Fred Luddy
Hun-
axiom if I've ever
Hungry and
heard.
humble.
Yep, hungry and humble. Um, that is the thing that he has continued to say to us when he left, and then continued to say afterwards. I think that's worth remembering. So, do you guys have anything to add to stuff that you're kind of keeping an eye on or tracking in terms of like stuff that you're looking into? For me, it was more like optimizing little things like that. But anything else that you guys are kind of interested in, or shall we go into extra credit for this week?
I'm doing the same stuff I was last week. I'm still pausing through Vanessa Van Edwards, and God help me, Ray Crockford. I'm almost done his coding book, and it is killing me.
Ooh, okay. Should we put that in like, so Ray Crockford's coding book? Do you want
It's JavaScript the good parts or something like that.
to? Ooh,
It's already in our notes. It's for speaking of humble enough to admit you don't know, but hungry enough to learn it. It's actually a great topic to think about. How do you stay hungry on things that you look at and you're like, it's a little like watching paint dry for me, but I keep coming back to it and finding ways to look at it and make it interesting for myself.
I feel like you gotta sell that better, man. Like, I don't know if I want to tell everybody that they're gonna have to learn how to watch paint dry, because I don't think that that's really, I
Right?
don't think that that's accurate. I don't.
Well, I think maybe that's the thing for another episode is how do you learn to make stuff interesting that might be a little challenging? Or how do you stick through things that you got to get to the through the hard parts to get to where it's fun again?
Should we call this maybe a Mary Poppins principle? I see
I
Luke.
like it.
Go ahead.
I saw a quote, and I don't remember the whole quote, but the first part of it was motivation is fickle. Motivation
Ah,
is fickle. And if you sit around and you wait for motivation, and there's a lot of stuff I love doing, but I'm not always motivated to do it. And sometimes I just got to kick myself in the butt and go do it. If I waited for motivation, it'd never get done. So motivation's fickle. It's not always going to be there for you when you need it. Figure out what you need to do and just go do it.
That actually, okay. So this is not where I was going to originally take this, but I feel like this is one of those things that's worth kind of thinking through. And so Brene Brown did her like Atlas the Heart thing, and then she talked about curiosity versus versus interest, right? The differences between the two. We all want to say that like we want our kids to be like curious, and Sundar Pichai like has famously said he'd rather have a curious employee than a knowledgeable one.
yeah.
Has been a big kind of thing that's been circulating around, and like how do we engender like curiosity in people? And she was like, it's really simple. In order to have curiosity, you have to have interest. In order to have interest, you have to feel like it's approach, like you have to feel like you have it, like even the slimmest chance of understanding. And that I think is like not a bad place to kind of think like through some of the extra credit. Like, how do you get yourself? Because some of us are like, some people on this call are like, we're SkillBridge, or we're doing next gen, or we're doing like free. ServiceNow fundamentals. Like, how do I make myself interested? How do I like light my own fire? And you want to be curious. The only way you're curious is if you have enough information to be interested. You can only be interested if you have enough information to feel like you have an opportunity to even succeed or even like get understanding. Like it is a specific cognitive like path. And that's what we're trying to do on the show is give people enough context to feel like I have at least the smallest handhold to be interested so that I can then be curious and continue on, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. We were just talking about an Adam Grant quote about something along those lines pretty recently. And that's like you're right, that's a perfect build into the extra credit stuff. So the piece that will have other people take a look at, or the extra work,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, I think that we'll put some links in the chat in terms of like ways to think about finding and Rob Fedoruk is like and CJ Wesley have been doing this on their show lately about how to build things like how to get interested or how to like kind of self-start. And the approach is always one that I find like very useful, and it's like build something for you, right? Just build something for you. Of course you'd be interested in it if you're like building it for you. And I think it kind of goes back to the same framework, right? So the extra credit this week is find something that matters to you that like doesn't matter if it's ServiceNow related, because then we're going to build an app about it, right? Because I think that that's kind of the next stage. I think this week's extra credit is to find something that matters to you, like find something that you care about. And I was gonna give us the E for a minute and say give a something about that you give a care about, and that
Nice.
that'll be enough for us to get you interested to be curious about where to start looking, right? But there's got to be that hook, right? Nobody's going to listen, nobody's going to learn, nobody's going to think about anything without the motivation, without the hook.
So the Ben, I liked your cognitive path of somebody feeling like essentially it's attainable, right?
Hmm?
Um, Nobody graduates high school with an understanding of Kubernetes.
Hmm.
I mean,
Generally speaking,
yeah, unless
Right.
generally,
they're interested, right? Unless they were
right.
curious. Yeah.
But there's a very real path that the technology has taken over the years that somebody else could follow in much shorter time frames to be a Kubernetes expert by the time they graduate from college, right? And so it's very much the same thing. When we're looking at ServiceNow and you want to know more, you want to get better, that's presumably why people are paying attention to us at all here. Um, what is it? Sean's first law? Stuff happens to things or whatever. I don't know.
People
Everything,
do stuff to things. Yeah.
right?
People do
People do
stuff to
stuff to
things.
things. Everything in ServiceNow is a record.
Yep.
It's all a record. So if you're looking at trying to debug a discovery that didn't run properly, look in the ECCQ table. It's a record in the table somewhere that's going to give you some more information. It's going to point to another record about the pattern that failed, right? It's all going to be there or around there somewhere. You've got the tool set. You understand that it's all in there somewhere. There's a record. You have the tool set to do anything in ServiceNow. Now, to Ben's point, go find a way to apply it to something you think is interesting. I know people at ServiceNow who've built out brewing setups. Right, Ben?
Besides like there's actually like several of us now. Like
Yeah,
we've got competing apps in the share.
yeah.
Ooh, and this is a great, I got to throw this. This is a story that's worth sharing with you all. One of the, there was an employee of ServiceNow back in the day, a smaller organization, who was trying to learn ServiceNow, and he was getting married. And that individual built an app to plan his wedding. That
Oh,
individual
snap.
now, if I remember correctly, is a CEO of his own organization now. And I cannot remember what he's doing. I'll have to go look it up. But he learned ServiceNow by figuring something that was important to him at the time and did exactly that. And look at where it led him. I mean, yeah. I'm
And
like going, oh, I just saw his thing the other day on LinkedIn.
This goes back to the old burrito app too. And then
Yep.
I was about to say something.
well, I was going to say, when we're starting to talk about motivation and understanding, like being interested and curious, and you look at a big problem, that's the other thing that a lot of people gets in the way of their curiosity, if you will. Oh, this is too big.
Mhm.
It's too much. Oh, you look at Kubernetes. It's just too freaking much, right? Well, spend 15 minutes. I got 15 minutes till my next thing. I'm going to go search a wiki article on this, right? Or if you want to be an artist, this may have been where I heard it. You're never going to be motivated to. You're not always going to be motivated to finish that painting. But if you go and you pick up your paintbrush and you put it in some paint, spend 5 minutes, you're going to make progress and you're going to feel good about that, and you're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
That's a nice callback to some stuff we talked about last week, right? Like in some of the things we were obsessed about. There was a series of like, all right, you're a designer, like it's about spending the time to do the thing, putting in like, okay, I don't have enough time to perfect my thing. I have 15 minutes. It's about being in the seat. It's about like putting in a little work. It's about getting to the gym. And in the same way, this is just like making sure that you prioritize time to get to the gym, and we all do it, and we all let ourselves, myself included, get sucked up like on something on my phone. I get distracted. I don't prioritize, right? So that there's a little bit of that when it comes to learning too. And I haven't talked about all dogs. Yes, like a dog walker
Oh,
app.
perfect.
Like, you know, like that's the kind of thing that like just thinking through the like requirements that it would take. Okay, so you're a dog walker, you have a business, you want somebody to come and use your website to book an appointment, right? Like, or find a time for you to dog walk, or like all of the services, all of that stuff you can build out. And sure, people go like, oh, somebody's already got an app. I don't care that there's already an app that does a lot of that stuff. That's not what this exercise is about. It's about understanding how you would go about that process. And who knows, you might build it better. There are people that have done the I might build it better that now have companies that they've pitched to ServiceNow, and ServiceNow has funded and then acquired on that same exact premise. Like, it didn't matter that there were 13 other apps doing it in the space. What mattered was they were really passionate and they wanted to make it the way that they wanted to make it. And with all of the other, honestly, this is kind of a nice thing. The first mover doesn't usually dominate the space. I mean, that's kind of why ServiceNow is like we took the lessons along the way. Fred Luddy blew up, like had a company blow up underneath him. That's part of the whole shtick, right? Took all the lessons, got really good at it. We took advantage of that, and that's how this happens. You can do it too, right? Like, and that's part of the learning with this, not just from a developer standpoint, but from a let's figure out how to make this the best platform we can. Let's make sure that we're doing and growing, because part of being an admin is deciding that you're gonna care about what happens out there, and you've got this building, right, this platform that you're going to take care of, and how to best take care of it. And you're not going to be a super forever. Well, maybe you're stoked doing that, I don't know, like maybe you're stoked doing that, like, and you could be a super for a bunch of buildings. But I think a lot of us want to figure out, how do we do this better, how do we do this the best we can. And there are people that are amazing admins. I think a lot of people also want to figure out, how do they make the world better? How do I take everything that we're doing now and leverage that and learn more and get better at what we do, whether it's being the best admin we can be, or being the best developer we can be, being the best consultant, or implementing other people's stuff, or supporting other people's stuff. So this is all, I don't know, it's all kind of life skill stuff, I think.
Yeah, I think this is great area and jumping off point for people. So Alyssa, we've got yours. I'd love for you guys to send, and it's great because I go, I'd love for you guys to send Ben. Well, the other
Yeah.
way, I guess.
Well,
Right?
or either of us, right? Because we'll build,
Right.
like, we'll
You
talk
can
about.
reach out to either of us and we can use it. So bring them and we can maybe start talking, building these things into apps, or how you might build those pieces out and start both getting a better understanding, which helps your ability for marketability in this space, but also building apps that do value for you, which could be amazing.
So, not, I was just putting in the chat. We don't have to call it out. Um, but so one of the things we're going to do, because as we move, what you guys have probably noticed is a pattern. I love patterns. We love patterns on this show. We're all about heuristics, meaning rules of thumb, and identifying kind of like where we can find the kind of 80%, or kind of like the commonality that we can make a quick decision, right, most of the time. And then identifying, because that's level one, right? Level one is identifying the situation and figuring out most of the time how to go forward. And then like leveling up past that is like okay, I understand the heuristic and now I understand how to get past that and understand where the tiny edges are where I can make other decisions. I think what we're going to be doing over the next couple weeks as we kind of move into the next few modules, because we're moving into development, we're moving into support, we're moving into um, some of the scripting areas from the fundamentals class for CSA. We're going to hammer home like this idea of work and also try to really figure out how best to kind of get our quick wins on finding these design patterns and leveraging existing design patterns. Because honestly, we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. We just have to figure out who's done it best and iterate faster, right? That's
Yeah.
part of that's part of the beauty here, right? Finding out like where do the design patterns work, where do they don't work for your specific use case, and then figuring out how to iterate quickly. So we're going to be doing that in the next couple, like I think that's the next module after this one. Oh, actually, I'm lying. There's one more in kind of the people do stuff to things realm, about how this work gets asked for, right? And that's the catalog item stuff. That's the
Idea
like,
portal.
well, I mean, it could be an idea, it could be a request, it could be an order, it could be any number of things, right? It's the stuff that I use baseline to run my household so that like when my son wants to borrow the car, when wants a sleepover, when there's like when I need to request a change to the network configuration, when right there's like lots of little things that happen in every environment regardless, right, that you can just kind of make some of these items for. And that's kind of going to be the next focus here. And then we're going to get into like because these also require requirements, right? Understanding what are the things that people ask for. Do I need a special variable? Do I need a baseline one? Do I need a whole new app for this? Right? You look at any of the return to work apps or any of the safety apps, they all follow the same principle. It's just like a catalog item request. So again, getting back to that people do stuff to things kind of notion.
Like it. Let me ask, do we have any other last things from everybody else? Other pieces from I'm looking to the LinkedIn, but my LinkedIn is a little slow.
I've refreshed mine a couple times and I think we're kind of wrapping it up, fellas. And I feel like we've done a pretty good bit of work just helping people kind of figure out what it is that they want to do for next time. So
Yeah.
I want to thank all of you guys. You know, Luke, thanks for joining again, talking about requirements. It was nice to have you on and also to kind of like change things up and talk about things from a security perspective too.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Hope we get you back again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. It got summer vacations coming up here, but I'd love to get back on as soon as possible.
I think
Perfect.
I think one of the things that'll happen after we finish up with the summer of ServiceNow fundamentals here in the next couple of weeks is I want to do some deeper dives into some of the specific platform areas, and I can't wait to bring you back for things like GRC or SecOps or
Hi,
like take
Tom.
advantage of or ITOM, like some of those things for sure. Um, and yeah, fellas, I really appreciate it. You guys spending 2 hours with me. It flies by every time. It's
I
always so
get the same. I'm like, wait, already? All right, I guess.
all right, guys. We're
Thanks,
gonna call
Alyssa.
it a day.
Thanks, everyone.
And
Thanks a bunch.
yep, make sure you guys send your questions to us. Make sure you send those questions in the subject line. Ben.forrest at servicenow.com or Sean.mclean at servicenow.com. We're working to actually, part of the things that we'll do before the end of our summer of fundamentals, we're going to build an app so you guys can put them into a portal.
Mm,
I've been like fighting the urge to just do it, but I want to do it on camera in front of everybody to kind of show you how that works because that's kind of the power of all of this. That's my app is to run this show via the app. And I've been like biting my tongue because I want to be able to do it and show you guys how to do that. So we're going to do that pretty soon. But for now, make sure you send those questions to us. We'd love it if you send us a voicemail, record yourself in a voice memo using your Android or iOS device, and then attach that to the email. That would be awesome. We'd love to play it on the show, or just send it to me, like, and let me know whether you are comfortable revealing who you are or not. Just make sure, because I'll check in with you. And we'll catch you guys next week. I'm looking forward to it, fellas. Ladies and gents, everybody out there, thank you guys so much.
Same. See you guys.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.